Imagine having the power to go back in time, to fix a future you believe is just fundamentally broken. But what if, after trying again and again, you find out the problem wasn't what you thought? That it was actually something, well, much closer to home.
It sounds like, yeah, a classic hero setup, but this source material we're diving into today,
Uh,
it takes that idea to some really unexpected places.
Absolutely. Today, we're doing a deep dive into this really fascinating and honestly incredibly complex story of James Bronn and the Counterclock Project. Our mission here is to unpack his journey, the powerful and often, frankly, disturbing forces behind his initial quest. And then there's this huge revelation that just completely shifts his whole understanding of everything past, present, future.
Yeah, the sources we have paint a pretty wild picture. It's a world reeling from a global invasion, grappling with these huge shifts in power, entangled in really deep geopolitical conflicts. We see it all through the eyes of this one guy, James Bronn, on his relentless quest to change history.
Okay, so let's maybe set the stage first. This world that Braun comes from, or maybe the world that was, is just fundamentally different because of this massive event, the global invasion by these subterranean beings, the Terrarians, back in 2004.
Right, and what's striking immediately is how this invasion, despite, huge global losses, the sources mention Israel's population dropping to like 3.3 million, it actually created new power dynamics. Old powers kind of faded and new ones popped up.
And this is where it gets really crucial for Braun's story later on. The U.S., after the invasion, apparently becomes one of the fastest recovering nations. And the sources claim this recovery was, well, partly due to full funding from something called the Confederate Reserve, described as 12 banks owned by this shadowy group, the Council of Twelves.
And that brings us to a really major, and let's be clear, highly controversial element in this narrative. What the source calls, using some very loaded language, Zionazi, or Israel First. This Council of the Twelves is portrayed as this hidden, immensely powerful group right at the center of it all.
Yeah, the narrative claims their power is just vast. They supposedly control global finance. The sources mention big names like BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, linked as donors to a fictional AI pack. And it's not just finance. They allegedly control media, too, like a fictional Oogle banning anti-Israel info and this Zionazi mainstream media with outlets like BNN, The Washington Post.
Right, so this pervasive influence, as the story tells it, creates this oppressive backdrop that really defines the future Braun is trying to escape. Political subversion is also part of their alleged toolkit. The source states their goal is a Jewish-led global government achieved by, well, undermining societies, promoting disunity.
And this is where the source's portrayal gets really provocative. It controversially claims they promote things like DEI, LGBTQ+ agendas in media and education, but frames these in the narrative as tactics to undermine morals, along with other really charged terms like blackwashing, feminacism, misandrism. The source calls it destroying the moral of humanity.
Yeah, it's a stark portrayal. The source attributes this doctrine to them, Israel über alles, and controversially states Zionism is the new Nazi. It suggests this twisted application of the idea that knowledge is most valuable when understood and applied.
And here's a claim from the source that's particularly striking and, again, very controversial. It alleges that Christianity's worship of a figure depicted as a Jewish man-god effectively makes half the world slaves to Jewish people. The source quotes this belief directly. The moment Christianity was born, that's the moment we already won. We already own half of the world. It's incredibly cynical.
It reveals this deep supremacist view embedded in how this group is depicted. And it gets darker. The narrative claims non-Jews, using the offensive term goyim, are seen as just cattle meant to serve. The sources even describe horrific things like organ harvesting from Palestinians as a claimed result of this ideology within the story.
Wow. Okay, so the U.S.-Israel dynamic described here is intense. It directly hits ordinary people. The sources say the U.S. government passed a Chosen People Act, authorized arresting anyone speaking against Israel, sending them off as cannon fodder in a Shield of Zion Corps.
And the money involved, according to the story, is staggering. Over $260 billion in aid since WWII, plus missile defense funding. This huge spending is shown contributing to unrest back in the U.S.
There's also mention of Operation Tabernacle, described as a PR stunt, using these figures, Stratos and Avi, to paint Israel as peace-loving against, quote, backward Palestinians. More alleged propaganda.
Exactly. And according to the sources, this heavily skewed dynamic leads to growing unrest. You see citizens boycotting taxes, resisting drafts. It fuels movements like America First, people trying to break free from this perceived control. Society's deeply divided.
So in this world, who stands up against the system? The sources introduce some key opposition figures, like Sergeant Sharia. He's described initially as a Catholic American soldier, but he becomes this symbol for people who've lost faith in traditional institutions.
His transformation is key. He embraces Islam, seeing it as a way to free America from what he calls Zionist mental slavery. His goal, make America great again where all men are equal before God. It's a radical shift driven by disillusionment.
Then there's Agasusanto, the Raven. Ethnically Jawa becomes a major figure in the Palestinian resistance, later quite radical. He argues Israel's tactics, joy-killing and abductions, as he puts it, are designed to provoke, to create excuses for mass killings, ethnic cleansing.
And the Raven holds this equally radical view. The West brought chaos to the Middle East for a century, and now he intends to return that chaos to Europe. For peace in the Middle East, his methods, things like rumbling, destroying military sites, robbing gold, ruining crops, imposing Sharia law. He's a force trying to rebalance the scales violently.
Okay, so this chaotic, charged world is the backdrop, which brings us squarely to James Bronn, the man against time. Who is he exactly?
The sources tell us he's a white teenage boy,
Yeah.
son of a British SAS member, from a future where Europe is, quote, occupied by Muslims.
And his motivation seems pretty clear and very personal. He blames Muslims for his future Europe. He's lived through this occupation.
Yeah.
He's just driven intensely to change that future. He thinks that's the source of his misery.
Right. And to do this, he gets involved with the Counterclock Project, which significantly links right back to that group we discussed earlier. It's funded and enabled by the Council of Twelves, the very group the source labels Zionazis.
And the project's stated purpose. It's chilling, according to the narrative, to alter the reality into submitting to their people, and ultimately erase God's existence in this world.
Yeah, it's this huge cosmic ambition, trying to wield time itself to reshape reality according to their ideology.
So Bronn's specific role in this grand, kind of horrifying plan, he's sent back to eliminate these high-profile Muslim terrorists, figures like bin Laden, Gaddafi, Lashon Ra, the Raven. The belief is taking them out prevents Bronn's future and achieves the council's goals.
The tech itself is interesting. A blend of sci-fi and, like, ancient mysticism. The counterclock time machine was supposedly reverse-engineered from something called the Holy Tefilim mechanism. Took these fictional Zionazi scientists 20 years to stabilize. Bronn's job is simple on paper, but huge. Go back, one-man army, execute the mission. High stakes doesn't even cover it.
Okay, here's where Bronn's journey takes this really unexpected turn. His perspective starts to shift big time. And this gives us a key insight into the story's core themes. Despite everything he does, all these attempts, every time he goes back to his future, nothing's changed. Muslims, as the source describes it, still occupy Europe, which, interestingly, the Raven frames differently, just Muslims being content in their mountains with their goats and flip-flops.
Right, and it's through these repeated failures, this unchanging future, that Bronn has this massive realization. He figures out the source of his misery isn't the Muslims he was targeting. He decides it's actually his government and all of the Zionazis who backed his government.
That's a huge shift, from an external enemy to an internal, systemic one.
Exactly. It completely transforms his understanding. He concludes his own forefathers caused it by, quote, delivering democracy to the Muslim countries, which the source explicitly calls a sarcastic reference to Western intervention and its, unintended consequences, the ultimate irony for him.
So this radical new understanding, it leads to a radical new mission. His objective flips completely. He decides he needs to go back and kill all of his government and all of the Zionazis who backed his government. He's not their agent anymore. He's their enemy.
And then there's this twist. On what he thinks is his last mission, he messes up. Ends up in a random timeline during the U.S. Second Civil War. And there, he meets Jinx's real name, Arya Prowira, a Jawa from the organization.
And Jinx's advice, it's blunt, tells him to eliminate the source of his misery, the Zionazis, the Council of Twelves.
Yeah, so hearing this from this unexpected person, confirming his own new theory, it just cements his new mission, solidifies his conviction.
And the outcome of this radical last effort, the source says it works. When he returns to his timeline, the future he wanted is finally there. There are no Muslims in the Europe. They are content in their mountains with their goats and flip-flops.
Which implies his new strategy, targeting the internal system, was successful. The narrative suggests the real problem was embedded in the power structures he served, not the external enemy he was led to believe in.
It's quite a story. James Bronn's journey with the Counterclock Project, it's a powerful fictional reminder, obviously, but still powerful, how our perceptions of problems can be just so influenced by the narratives we're fed. What started as this mission against an external enemy completely shifted when he realized the true source of misery, as the source puts it, was closer to home, tied to control, manipulation, ideology.
Absolutely. And it makes you think, right? In our world, saturated with information, how often do we maybe misidentify the root cause of our own challenges, like Bronn initially did? How much of what we see as external threats might actually be symptoms of deeper internal issues, or maybe just the fallout from past actions we haven't fully reckoned with?
What does it mean for concepts like truth and justice when, as the source quotes Malcolm X, power can control the minds of the masses? It really raises a big question for all of us listening right now. What perspectives are we missing? What might you discover if you really dared to sort of unmask the narratives shaping your world?